side, and I'll go like Commissioner Savas has just done. Did you have a question? Or you?
I just have a comment. I just want to thank Trent for his presentation. Great job, spot on. But one thing I want to highlight is that he mentioned the agenda. That's your agenda. And the way we've ensured that over the years was, I think that early on when we started, there was a concern by some of the cities that the county was setting the agenda for C4. And that's clearly not the case any longer. That's why the retreat is so important, because the retreat, we set the priorities and then we come back here and we ask you, here's what we heard at the retreat. And then we as an executive committee work on making sure that we are filling that work plan and we develop that work plan. And so each of these meetings are really set going forward on what came out of the retreat. So that, number one, want to draw attention obviously to the retreat and draw attention to the executive committee and the work that we do or they do. And that's how we ensure that the agenda is what you all want. And if we're midstream in the year and we want to put something else on there, we have been open to it. Housing, supportive housing services and so forth is something new for us, relatively a couple, 3 years. So we've broadened our scope a little bit, but so I want to make sure everyone knows that if you got something you want to bring to us or bring to the table or bring to the group, we'll find a way to make it happen. And I want to also acknowledge all the great work of all the subcommittees and technical committees. Looking at Dwight, one of our very first subcommittees was the transit committee. So they took it, ran with it. They meet every Wednesday? Every Wednesday. So, and they're doing some fantastic work on coordinating throughout the county to make more regional connections. So that's just one example of many, as long as our technical committee. So Chair, back to you.
Paul.
Under the composition of the executive committee, there is under letter D, water and sewer districts. And there's only one entity in the county that is both a water and sewer district, and that's mine. Should that read water or sewer district?
Here.
My duties.
It's up to you. And I will say that, there was a season where the bylaws were a special and hot topic that our group got to spend some time tightening. And since that time, there has not been the same desire to go and find opportunities like that to reach some clarification. So I think that we really want to hold some things loose and some things tight, but I think the broader question there is, does the group that you represent, namely special districts of water, feel like they have representation at that seat? Is how I think I would advise this body to think about that spot.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
I think so.
Okay. And that is, yeah, we won't go in the Wayback Machine and talk about bylaws. What other questions do you all have about C4 and what we do and the benefits of it? I will kind of piggyback on Paul's comment. I know over the years, there's been conversation that a lot of the mayors a lot of the representatives of your cities don't come. They didn't see that there was any value to C4 or that C4 wasn't, it was just another meeting to go to that didn't get anything done. And I think over the last couple of years, I think this group has shown that that's not the case. If we gather together and we hash out the ideas and the things that we want to work on and move forward, we can have a major impact. We've seen that with Sunrise Corridor. We saw that with tolling, though I think my favorite line these days from Princess Bride is mostly dead, not all the way dead. But we fought really, really hard, shoulder by shoulder to get that where it is. And it's still a heated conversation. So I don't think our work is done on that and what that's going to look like. So if you are feeling, or if you're, new and you're like, okay, what's our place? Reach out and ask me. I'll gladly meet for a cup of coffee and have that conversation. I've been involved now since, I've been co-chair now for 6 years, 7,
8.
8 years. and then been on this committee since becoming mayor of Canby. So, yeah, there were probably times where it was a little bit, I'll use the bylaws where that ate up a lot of time. But we got it ironed out and I think we're better for it. So, we've got a lot to focus on. So if there are no other questions, we will move on in the agenda. So those of you that are new, welcome to C4. Careful what you wish for. Just kidding. It's a good group. It really is. Great. Next on the agenda is the retreat discussion and survey findings, and that is yours. Fabulous.
Good evening, C4. By way of background, the C4 Executive Committee is starting the process of planning your annual retreat, which typically occurs over the summer months. Last month, a survey went out to mayors, city managers, and members of this group to get a better sense of the timing and preferred topics for a summer retreat. We received 12 responses to that survey, including one staff member. As part of the survey respondents had the opportunity to identify potential retreat topics. The most commonly identified topics related to infrastructure funding, transportation, transit, and housing. Less common topics included things like home rule, unfunded mandates, tax structures, and the like. We'll return at a future meeting to refine those topics for a future retreat agenda. But for the purposes of this meeting, tonight is a touch point to talk about the date setting element of that survey. C4 had roughly equal support for two options, which are July 25th and 26th and August 8th and 9th. We are at the whims of the availability of the resort where we typically hold the retreat. However, if the options are both open, I would love to hear if there's one that the body prefers. July 25th and 26th and August 8th and 9th.
So is this conversation, you want a decision tonight or,
If there's one you prefer, it would be helpful to know.
okay. Mayor Kaiser.
Personally, I think the July 25th, 26th would be better. The August 8th and 9th is the, 5 days before the holiday. So trying to take Friday, Saturday, or Friday off, and then the following Wednesday through Saturday. It would at least give a little bit of space in between the two events.
Thank you, sir. Any other initial thoughts?
I would as well.
So by a show of placards, who has an opinion on the July one?
And I'll be there.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Those for the August date, is there a preference? Maybe you voted for the July one, but the August one's okay. Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay. It appears that July may be the one.
Sounds like Mayor Buck is good with either one.
Okay.
All right.
Can I bring up one thing, when we're talking about scheduling? I'm on May.
Is your microphone on?
Our May meeting is going to be falling very close to a conference also. I think that will be the LOC Spring Conference on our May meeting. So something to note, we may look at rescheduling because that conference will take away mayors and council members from this group.
Where is the spring conference?
Who's best?
North Bend.
North Bend.
Okay, Coos Bay. South Bend, Indiana, Coos Bay, and North Bend. Okay.
Yeah.
Road trip. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. There you have it, Jamie.
There we go.
Okay. Next on the agenda, sorry, anything else on that? No. Okay. Next up was appointments for the Executive Committee and R1 Act. Jamie.
Yeah, now we're getting into the interactive portion of our agenda. C4 is tasked with facilitating some periodic nominations and appointments, including appointments to the C4 Executive Committee and nominations to the R1 Act, which is the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. Under the C4 bylaws, C4 selects its executive committee membership in the March meeting of the year, which is tonight. If you are part of the executive committee, could you raise your hand for me? Okay, so these members are great. They are responsible for setting your agendas, planning your retreat, and facilitating continuous improvement of the C4 body. Thank you for your service to the group. So there is some flexibility in how executive committee members are nominated. In the past, C4 has held space in its agenda for its different membership groups to caucus in the room and then come back and report their members for the executive committee. Can I get by a nod of heads? Is there interest in selecting members in the same way? Taking about 10 minutes, caucusing and coming back? Seeing some nods?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
When do they meet?
On the second Monday of the month from 5:30 to 6:30 over Zoom,
In the morning or at night?
evening.
Evening.
If
Okay.
we met at 5:30 in the morning, I would be very,
Oh.
very sad. Okay. In terms of the composition of the executive committee, we have one urban city, one rural city. We have the county. So the county may be caucusing by itself tonight with a member of one. Uh, We also have our special districts, including a representative for CPOs and hamlets, the fire district, and the water district. So with C4 being agreeable, what I propose we do is break for about 10 minutes and invite the urban cities to caucus over by the flag, the rural cities to caucus over by Ms. Hensley, and our special districts to caucus over by the food and to take an opportunity to get seconds. And then we will come back at 7:35 or sooner.
I'm voting member. I don't get to caucus.
And we're done. He pointed at me and said,
You are?
I've been sitting all day.
I said, you want it? He said,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay.
Oh, he's from Norway.
Okay, so, no.
Oh,
He doesn't want us. Keep it with the CPOs.
Well,
Yeah.
so you can get another cookie.
I could, but I had to.
Oh.
But it's not like.
Of course, well, yeah, I mean, I think it falls on me, right? But actually, technically, the board either way kind of picks. Technically, so we'll be discussing that next week. If I get removed from C4, then I can't really appoint I doubt if I'll be removed. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm figuring it out.
Pardon?
No.
Okay.
Too bad. No. We are privileged. We don't have to. No. Otherwise, they could make you do the work. The only thing we can do. I've got a retreat. On Friday.
I'm not by.
One year I went.
I'm a CPO.
Like Friday
I think I'm with the city.
afternoon.
The rural city.
Some people say,
We're not even a city, but we're.
oh, so.
So in Hamlet,
I wish it was. Discuss.
Be nice.
Yeah. They said I was.
No.
Now.
They're in the middle. See if I can get them in.
Yeah.
We'll see. Actually, I just feel like there's just an excuse to drink. But then most conferences are.
So
You're coming on.
I know, right? That was so good. I knew.
It's all good.
Where are you at? They were- Oh, you were going. I know. What happened? What
Yeah.
They're gonna go to,
What's
Blair,
that again?
so it's Rockaway.
You're just, but you're in. Maybe what? As you will. And I mean, Christina's got a million things, you've got a million things, Amy's got a million things. Yeah, I got it.
But he was supposed to be there.
Okay.
He was a little.
Yeah, I'm
he was-
thinking you're not volunteering.
Yeah, it was the recommended option. I didn't. It was fine.
So right now that. It's not.
Yeah.
Where they're active.
We're getting better. We're getting these.
That's kind of like a village model, right? Kind of like a community township type of model where you're really not, you don't collect taxes. Per se. Villages have the ability to taxes to.
Same thing. There's. I do.
We don't have to build. We don't need.
Yeah.
Bring. No, it's really good. Really good. They're trying to structure it south. The road goes that way. They were going up and making a lot. Broken bottles and old tires and chairs. I know you're.
The electric is better than I.
No, just because they're growing compared to yours and I. Through all the
Something about land use. Yeah. On your.
Yeah. I want it to work for whoever.
I don't know about it.
Thanks. You wanna come circle around? Actually, yeah. If we're just bring it up, we don't want to say.
But yeah,
How long have you been doing the hair?
I didn't know if we needed to do official nomination.
2015.
Seemed to be a general consensus.
That's probably about me too.
Jamie, do you want vote? Do you want nomination and vote? Or-
Just tell us.
Cool. Brian's it.
All right, friends, going once, going twice, we are bringing the group back together. Oh, urban cities, who have you selected?
pleased to nominate Michael Milch from Gladstone.
Michael Milch,
Great.
fantastic. Rural cities,
I get the honor of remaining.
yeah, okay. CPOs and hamlets.
I'm still stuck with it.
This is our first meeting with new people, Kenny.
You mean executive committee is not your favorite committee? Come on.
I was promised half-hour meetings.
Those are organic, sir.
I will say, when I first started with the county, my Zoom account had a 45-minute meeting limit. We had the most efficient meetings. Fire district, I don't see Matthew Silva tonight, so we'll circle back to that. And water/sewer district.
The incumbent was reelected by an overwhelming margin of
100% consensus. All right, thank you,
One and a
C4.
half.
Okay. So that was the first part of tonight's exercise. Our last appointment tonight is a little bit more involved, and it is the appointments for the R1 Act, the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. By show of hands, who is familiar with the R1 Act? Okay, seeing some down. By way of background, the R1 Act is an advisory body established as a forum for people in ODOT Region 1 to collaborate on issues affecting ODOT. And Region 1 includes Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington, and Hood River counties. So it's a slightly larger geography. R1 Act is intended to strengthen state and local partnerships in transportation planning, programming, and development. The primary mission is to advise the OTC on state and regional policies. In practice, it's very much felt like R1 Act is a great starting place for someone to learn about the region, especially the broader transportation context and picture. Members on the R1 Act serve staggered 4-year terms. Clackamas County has several seats, but 2 seats within our county family are up for reappointment this summer, including a labor seat that's currently held by Bill Merchant and a seat held by Councilor Pratt, which has traditionally been held by an urban city. Both members have expressed interest in continuing. Tonight, we're requesting that C4 consent to the reappointment of Bill Merchant in the labor seat and determine whether to reappoint or refill the city's seat. And with that, I will open it up for discussion and/or a nomination.
I nominate both to the seat.
We have a first. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, first by Mayor Kaiser, second by Mayor Bielostowski, excuse me. Would you care to call for the vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? There we go.
Welcome back to the R1 Act.
Can I make a comment on that? Because we have so many people gathered, whoops. We have so many people gathered here today, but the R1 Act came about as a result of the rural community in Clackamas County who felt they were not getting represented. We're the only area commission on, well, the only area in the state that did not have an area commission on transportation. And JPAC essentially was filling that role for the urban piece. Obviously, in our boundaries, we're limited to urban. So we had this big, huge block, as did Washington County to some degree, but more so East Multnomah had that problem as well. Long story short, then State Rep Kennemer heard from the rural people, and he had raised it a couple sessions in a row, 2 or 3 sessions in a row, and finally got a concession that the state would do a Oregon consensus program to solve this problem. And lo and behold, it was created. And since then, well, we had to wrangle regionally with the membership, and unfortunately, to some degree, fortunate and unfortunate, I think Mayor Hodson's been there the whole run. So he knows this, and I'd love for you to speak up on it a little bit too, if you could. The composition of the group is quite a bit urban, nonetheless. So, but, I have been, and Mayor Hodson and our colleagues and some of these people you see on here, Bill Avison and most especially Bill Merchant, who was one of those people that lobbied then State Representative Bill Kennemer to get this representation for an area commission on transportation. So we're the longest sitting group of people that are still today on this Region 1 Act. But we need your voices at times, whether you're on the act or not, sometimes under public testimony, to bring attention to that. By the way, this is not just urban. JPAC's doing a great job of that, by the way. But we need the rural voices, whether it's Hood River, Washington County, East Multnomah County, whatever it may be. The challenge with Washington County is that they're actually in two acts. So most of their rural area is in a neighboring act. So they don't have the same challenge we have, but I just want to just make that point that if you feel as though you're not being represented or you feel as though you're not getting a strong voice, we need folks to come. And I will tell you over the years, whether it's been urban issues or it's been tolling, I just want to applaud everyone over the years that have come to those meetings and have raised their voices, whether that's urban or rural. So just want to acknowledge that that's our tool. You're the most underrepresented cities, the rural, in this region. And you gotta raise your voices and be in attendance. And here is a great place. And this man here, my partner over here, co-chair Hodson, has been in there for the whole haul. And I know that he meets with you all, the rural mayors at times to get coordination, but it also helps to be here at this table as well. And I know that Sandy's not here tonight. Oh, you are? That's right. I mistook you for Happy Valley. That's right. I'm sorry. Different job. That's right. So, yeah, great, awesome. My mistake. And I made a mistake. I'm gonna make also a personal apology to Mayor O'Neill. I politely, I thought, used him as an example of this VRF imbalance of the rural stuff. And I think I may have slightly offended him. I apologize.
No, it just got me on my toes early.
Baptism by fire. Yeah. So, but Mayor, do you have anything to add?
I don't actually have much to add. It is a very, unfortunately, it's been a very Portland-centric group. And when you've got Clackamas County, Multnomah County, part of Washington County, which is heavy urban, and then Hood River, there is a little bit of feeling left out of the conversation and whatnot. And so like just talking recently with Mayor Kaiser about something that's important to Malala from a transportation perspective, that, that's important that I bring that forward. And that's no different than anyone else here too, whether that is the urban cities that have something that needs to be brought up that we need to force through or advocate for, then let us know what that is. Those people, myself and Commissioner Savas and Valerie, please let us know how we can help do that. Some of the meetings do end up being more of a data dump on us of projects that have already been planned or already being talked about and moving forward. And so the more that we have to bring in and get that part of the plan for ODOT, the better. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Last thing on that, and this is more to the smaller cities, whether you're urban or rural, and that is that, and Mayor, you may remember this, but we were having a discussion about the capacity of the cities to actually apply for some of these grants. And I thought I was pretty struck by the Portland representative, Millicent Williams, who works for PBOT, offered her staff to help some of the other folks, so give advisement or help. So by the way, that one's like, let you know that olive branch was extended by Portland, that if there's, whether it's applying for a grant or it's technical, that she offered to provide assistance to some of the smaller cities. That was not just Clackamas, that's Hood River, anyone. But that was a big step towards cooperation and collaboration. So I just wanted to share that.
Any other questions on the Region 1 Act at all? Okay. All right. Then I believe next up is Mr. Wilson with a legislative update.
Hello again. Thanks for having me. And I will provide a little bit of a legislative update, but I am pleased to be supported by 2 of our own from Clackamas County who also sit in the halls of Salem from time to time. And so if you have anything to add, please feel welcome to build upon whatever narrative, I'm about to put down. The legislative session here at the state is one of many bills. In fact, it's the most bills I think that have ever been introduced in the history of Oregon's legislative sessions. And so we were looking at it at the Association of Oregon Counties a couple of weeks ago, and we noticed that in 2021, The total number of bills introduced were like only like less than 1,500 bills total that were, introduced. And so now we're at a little above 3,300 bills, and I believe over 4,000 bill concepts have been introduced to Ledge Council. So there will be somewhere in between that those bills land. And I think we're getting to the final phase of getting close to the final number here, but it is a lot. A lot of those bills are study bills, which are kind of empty blank bills. And so there's been just so many introduced. And I would say if you see anybody in Salem, they look very like frazzled and overwhelmed because there's just a lot of bills. There's also a growing hint, hint, growing contingent of folks who want to see bill limits during the long session, and I am one of them. So if that's ever going to be possible, I don't know, but I think there is certainly an interest by many. It's pretty tough too. I think the committees have a hard job to see all those bills come their way. There's only so many minutes they can schedule into their committees where they can actually hear some of the bills that are coming at them. So they're doing their best, and probably one keynote that's coming up here in about a month, a little less than a month, is the first chamber deadline. And so we're going to start to see some of these bills die off pretty soon. We're past the quarter-way mark through the legislative session, on our way towards the end of June, where they will adjourn, signing, die, and we'll be on to the next session, the short session next year. The priorities remain the same at the legislature. It's the top four. It's behavioral health, education, housing, and transportation. And when I say housing, I think I dominantly mean land use. And that's been, I think, a priority out of the governor's office. We've seen bills that she's introduced that are heavy on land use to try to do land usey things to build more doors. And that's just shorthand. But the idea is to like, how can we smooth out the pathway to build infrastructure and build those doors to reach those goals that the governor set across the state. And we've talked about that here at C4, right? Like how many doors do each of the cities in the county, how many doors are you responsible for building under the new benchmarks? So we can come back and have those conversations, but we're seeing a lot of concepts come through the session that would expedite some of those, and they're being met, I feel, by a lot of the public, League of Cities, Association of Oregon Counties, with consternation about how many bills have already passed that sort of tap into what the local governments are able to do and perform. And I think the growing consensus between the Association of Oregon Counties and the League of Cities is we're still implementing the bills that have passed in the last few years. It's hard to then just, move the goalpost again and implement different ones now. And I think there's all a mutual interest by both the jurisdictions and the state to build the doors that we know we all need to do, but the ability to process that, and I think there's just a growing desire to just give it some time to mature. And so that's the tension I think that we're seeing, at least from the public lobby and the state as they're moving through some of these housing bills. Not that the goal isn't a good goal, just that the challenge of the mechanisms that are being discussed right now are challenges, right? And so how can we meet in the middle? And that seems to be the direction of some of those conversations as it relates to housing and land use. Education, I'm going to look for maybe a head nod. I haven't really seen that really get momentum just yet. Yeah. So, and then behavioral health is starting to get some momentum, especially in the Joint Committee on Addictions. And so we're seeing some discussions there. And then I would say transportation is both ramping up and also slowing down at the same time, no pun intended, but really because of the articles that came out about ODOT's budget woes a couple of weeks ago have really put a damper on the attitude and maybe the optimism that a transportation package is going to move forward. However, there is still a great need. And one thing that we're talking a lot about in the halls of Salem is that you can't just go to Fred Meyer and buy a different ODOT. How can we help the one that we have here? And also, how do we still try to work to address the needs that we all know that we have, not just needs that ODOT has, which are real, right? But also needs that you have at the city and county level. And so with the transportation package, here's where we're at. The articles that came out and the discoveries that have been discussed have really changed what were the initial 3 goals of the transportation package, which we all saw last year, right? And those work groups and the tours by JCT, they were focused on the 2017 projects. They were focused on transit or multimodal, and then they were focused on operations and maintenance, or O&M. And y'all's big position on that, everyone's big position on that has been preserve 50-30-20, preserve 50-30-20, preserve 50-30-20. Since the articles have come out, I would say the 3 talking points have really been around needs, funding, and accountability. And it really has been simplified down to that. And the co-chairs and the Joint Committee on Transportation have really emphasized this is not a new projects package, which has been, I think, a challenge for a lot of legislators because that has just been the history of transportation packages the last couple of cycles to discuss it and figure out like what's the right number to raise the gas tax but then at the end, just like, did I get a project in there? Did I bring something home? And I don't think that that's really where this is going this year because of the accountability piece, because of the heavy O&M needs at ODOT, but also at the local level too. And then just the lingering costs of those projects that were not fully funded or fully delivered but from the 2017 package. So those things have weigh heavy over the Transportation Committee and the challenges that they're trying to solve. Transit is still in the mix in those conversations. I know it wasn't one of the three that I just renamed, but there is a transit discussion that's happening in there, and there is an interest to make sure that there is that transit money is moving forward in a way that's helpful across the state. So one other lingering piece here that is also being discussed, and it'll probably show up at some point, is how to simplify the weight mile tax, and that's a lingering consternation from when there was a discovered for lack of a better phrase, inequity between heavy vehicles and light vehicles. A lawsuit that was hanging over the state between OTA and the legislature last year, and now just more conversations about how to reconcile that because what you'd hear from the OTA is that Oregon is one of the most expensively taxed trucking states in the union. So here we are. Easy stuff, right? To try to like sort out in 160 days when you meet twice a week. So just super easy. So give them your love when you see your legislator and try to encourage them that you still do want to see a transportation pass the values and outcomes document that this group continues to support and that y'all resupported here in February, I think has been really helpful. Again, just in my conversations to encourage legislators, like, yes, the problems are big. Yes, you have the support to try to solve them. Right. And I think the more you can say that to a legislator that we do need a different type of package that is like the fundamentals, the more I think they will be encouraged to move forward. And what I've heard from legislators again, like, oh, I really do wish this was a projects package. A 50-30-20 O&M boost to ODOT at the level that they're talking about is a big boost to all of you as well. And I do believe that if y'all were to get a boost in the same way through the State Highway Fund that ODOT is trying to achieve as well, there are going to be projects. And so spend some time with your councils, I think, to unpack what that could be. Even if it's like not like this road or this many miles of pavement, but like we would prioritize safety projects. We would prioritize repavement. Trying to work with your legislator to help them understand, even though it's an O&M package, it is still a projects package because just like everybody else, there's things that need doing on the roads in all of your communities. And having that commitment and that understanding and that confidence for your local legislators would be a really big deal to help them get across the finish line. Outside of that, I would say one lingering top priority that's not a top priority, but is going to be coming up here pretty soon, I believe, is like how to fund wildfire in the state, especially as the federal government makes some interesting choices about the federal forest program. And we have a lot of federal forest in Clackamas County. Over half of our land in Clackamas County is federal forest lands. So we are thinking a lot about that as those decisions are made, but the state is trying to solve, I believe, a $300 million goal per year, if I think that's right, on how much money do you need to fight the type of wildfires we've been seeing over the last 4 or 5 years. So no small thing, but that's a money question. And where does it come from and how does it get spent, especially in what might be a new normal with the incoming administration at the federal level. And then the last thing that I want to share is, I guess, two last things. Again, a former favorite project of Clackamas County and C4 is that the Willamette Falls Locks has a bill in session. And so I think they have a first hearing coming up here later in March. And then for those cities who are working with their legislators to try to get a capital project through maybe a lottery bill later in the year, I believe those due dates are coming up for when those capital request forms are going to be due. And so that's the end of March. If you have something in mind and you've been working with the legislator, get that filled out, please. That's what I have to report from Salem and what I've been working on. I'm happy to take any questions or if y'all want to add any additional details from y'all's offices in Salem, I'm happy to add that too.
So Trent, there's a lot there, but for the group, is everyone here familiar with the 50-30-20 split conversation that we were talking about? Seeing heads, yes. If you're not sure, 50% goes to the state, 30 goes to Trent. Sorry, I meant Clackamas County. And 20% comes back to the cities in terms of transportation dollars. Okay. So my question, Trent, I get, and you said 300 million for fighting fires?
For wildfire. I think that's the funding target that was set.
Now, is this for fighting fires when they occur? Or is this in preventing them?
Yes.
Spoken like a lobbyist. Because to me, I think the bigger piece is how do we prevent the situation from occurring? And what is that going to look like? So you're telling me there's bills for both, or how is that looking?
There are funding concepts that have been worked out in work groups in off session, and I believe there are several wildfire bills that will be amended shortly that will start to discuss those revenue mechanisms. There is, I don't know if I want to talk about this. There's also this lingering wildfire map issue that has been, y'all know what I'm saying, y'all knew what it was. That's out there too. That has, I would say, some consternation in the building, but I don't know if it has momentum to make that map go away. There have been a lot of conversations and tables and reworking of that map, a lot of opportunities to weigh in. I don't know what the future of that map looks like. I believe there might be some lawsuits coming in towards that map, but until such a time as it doesn't exist, it's there, right? And it's there to help kind of figure out where to do fire hardening at the land use level, at the planning level, with houses that are in the communities near areas that ODF, determined with whatever process they determined it, that, those certain units need that additional fire hardening. So there is prevention mechanisms there to try to address some of that, not always agreed upon. But I think there's a lot of there with the efforts to try to create some fire hardening opportunities. But I just don't think anybody has a perfect solution to it that they can propose. And again, most of the lands in the state that are trees are federal. And so it's like, where can the state actually weigh in with some of those pieces to do the preventative work, if not for the land use side and if not for the state forest? Those are some of the tensions that I'm hearing about when I'm in a wildfire conversation, and specific to prevention. And then, but when the fire starts, the border about whose land is it really disappears. It's about how do we all show up and solve the problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to go right down the road here. So Mayor Kaiser, you're first.
2 parts. You brought up-
Microphone on, please.
Huh?
Microphone.
Sorry, 2 parts. You brought up a three-word term for ODOT needs,
Funding and accountability.
there was 3 of them, I thought.
Yeah, needs, funding, and
There you go.
accountability.
Well, it's kind of hard to figure out what the needs are when we don't know what the funding is. Knowing how much money they have, where it's going. I mean, I'm not sure how the state can solve any problems when nobody's got a real accurate record on where all the money's being distributed that they currently have. And so I find it hard to sit down and try to fathom, we've heard Governor Kotek bring up several times, especially with the tolling, if you guys don't like it, where do we get the money from? Well, how do we know where to get the money from if we don't know where it's going and how much they're exactly getting? And then as far as the wildfire issue, half of the problem could be solved between prevention if they'd start logging. I mean, it's a real simple answer. The loggers, I think it was yesterday, it was an interview with Mike Peel. And Mike Peel, for those who don't know, was one of the biggest logging companies in the state of Oregon. He's based out of Vernonia. And I want to say back before Timber Unity, he probably had about 200 employees. He got the big contracts. He handled all the big logging, the most dangerous logging. He officially, as of yesterday, is down to 20 employees because logging is locked up. And for those who don't know, when a logger goes in, they come in with their own fire apparatus. they log until certain times because of fire weather and danger. And then they sit there and wait for so many hours to make sure there's no fire. They're also usually the first ones on scene if there is a fire because it takes so long for federal resources to show up. So is there any talks on trying to bring loggers back into it, especially since the Spotted Owl was the group that oversees the endangered spotted owl is getting defunded?
I don't know if I can answer your question for a number of reasons, but I'm going to take the safety blanket of there are 3,400 bills and I haven't read them all. So I don't know. I don't think so. And I would say that increased logging candidly amongst friends, but into a microphone doesn't have the votes.
Well, if logging would come up, they might have enough money for ODOT.
My idea is to send goats in, just under
There
the
you go.
underbrush.
Wild Oregon goat.
There it is.
Wild Oregon goats.
Scapegoats.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Mayor Milch.
I think this body or another one of our groups talked recently about jurisdictional transfers of state highways with the emerging concerns about ODOT fiscal responsibility and accountability and efficiency. I saw an article, I think Mayor Bialostowski, it was behind a paywall. I haven't read it yet, but you're talking to the press about wanting to handle Highway 43. Is there more legs to that now? Or is this something that is done at a legislative level, or is it more administrative? Are we starting to see that as an option as part of a package?
There have been legislatively passed jurisdictional transfers. And that has been, I think, the way of the past, especially in the city of Portland, where there has been just jurisdictional movement. And sometimes I think that happens when the city, a city and ODOT, are taking too long to get to an issue or a disagreement about how something happens. And so I've seen that happen legislatively in the past. I also know just even locally, it is still a challenge to find willing partners to take on, some of those roads. Are they upgraded appropriately or to a city standard from a state highway? And so it's complicated. And then I'll just add on top of that to get those upgrades before they're transferred, because Mayor Bialostowski, I'm wild guess here, I don't think you want 43 unless it's leveled up, right, to the city standard. That's super expensive. And if they're doing a transportation package where there's no new projects, I don't know how you're going to get to that point where I could get to the point where you're comfortable taking that road. Because I don't know if your city wants to take on a project that you already know has a pretty big, upgrade to make it fit for what you need it to be for your community. So I would just say it's complicated. And the more that a city or a jurisdiction is willing to bring to that conversation, the more likely ODOT's ready to get to make a deal like that. Otherwise, you need a bill or you need a transportation, adjustment at the legislature.
Just to add on there, I was going to ask a question about that. But there's this thing called the Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee that we've been studying in Westland. And it's a state committee that receives applications for jurisdictional transfers and then evaluates them and makes recommendations to the legislature for which should be funded. And so basically, this committee doesn't provide funding, but they're making recommendations to the Transportation Committee and the legislature. And this past year, they recommended 2, Hall Boulevard and Tigard and one of the highways in Hood River, for Hall Boulevard 50 million and Hood River 30 million. And that process is where that deal is made with ODOT
Right.
at the committee, then at this JTAC, if you will.
Yeah.
And so what I was curious about is if you've heard of it, if any of the, it then goes to the legislature and they have to actually fund it to happen. Because this Transportation Advisory Committee is just saying this should be, Hall Boulevard should be funded at 50 million. So I'm wondering if you've heard anything about that, or if, because if there becomes a big backlog, what's the point of this committee,
Sure. Well, I just, all that work in 2 projects. So that's the whole state. Those 2 projects have a hearing on Monday or Tuesday. I just saw them on the JCT agenda. So that's coming up. And you had a adjustment to that too, or a comment on that?
Yeah, so that Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee put forward 2 nominations. They solicited nominations from across the state. They're really looking for areas where a city already is ready to accept the road, the city can still come forward with ideal conditions that the road would be delivered in. But this would be like braiding together the two funds where the city is paying for ongoing maintenance. The ODOT would then bring forward funds to bring it up to state of good repair. I think where this committee is it was enacted without funding, with the understanding that a transportation package was coming up. This is an area where if the county is serious about wanting to have jurisdictional transfers be on the docket over the next decade or so, to lean in and say we want continuous funding for the work of this committee in the same way that Safe Routes to School or Great Streets receives continuous funding. I think this is an area to lean in on. It is what I would say one of those additional options in a transportation package. Is there going to be ongoing funding for this committee? Do we want to see jurisdictional transfers happen where we get funds for state of good repair, or is it something that we don't think is a priority? So something for maybe us to discuss and maybe us to give some direction to Trent on.
I can build on that a little bit. So everything everyone said is correct. I just want to just add, this has come up at the ACT, and both Hood River and Tigard made their presentations. And prior to this new committee, jurisdictional transfers happened when ODOT was interested and the city was interested and the funding was there. So this committee is, as William kind of laid out there, it's relatively new. I know that Malala was one that was actually, you started the process, but wasn't ripe. Things didn't come together. And I think that's what we heard. So my comments earlier about Portland offering the help was that when this was discussed at the last R1 Act meeting, the case was being made that there were only 2 applicants that were ready and ripe in this committee. So those projects moved forward, whereas a number of other ones didn't make it. And whether that was technical staff and whatnot. So it's not the only way it happens, but if the legislature chooses to fund it again, it might be the means. But I would certainly like to better understand all the applicants, all the jurisdictions that applied, and better understand what the roadblocks were, so maybe they can be more successful.
We didn't have any roadblocks. We went straight to Ryan Wincheimer and made a proposal for taking over 211 through our city. And it was, for us to do the work, it would be cheaper than ODOT. And we needed $13 million and they came back with 2 and said, go talk to your legislator. And so, now we're begging and pleading and trying to get somebody's attention because we haven't been repaved in over 20 years. And we're trying to bring businesses in and everything else. And that is our main thoroughfare through our city. So the other thing that ODOT is absolutely ignoring is diversion. Tolling, something's going to happen with 205, whether it's tolling, congestion pricing, whatever. And truck drivers aren't stupid. They're going to get off at Woodburn. They're going to drive right through me, head over to Estacada, come right up to Sandy, and then trek over to I-84. And that whole route is not being paid attention to. And so, we're trying to look at saying, okay, great. If you're not going to repave it, get this bridge replaced. We want to take over. We want to take it over. And they're like, well, here's 2 million. Well, 2 million isn't going to even repave half of it. And we're looking for from city limits to city limits. So let alone replace a bridge, a sidewalk, or a walking path that they put in that is not safe. Rain drains that are 2 inches above the ground that they approved, just really goofy things that make it really unsafe.
Well, my message is, if you're having challenges with ODOT, reach out to me. I'll figure out a way to help and bridge that.
Mayor Hodson has my letter that I sent to all of ODOT and the Transportation Committee, and I'll have him forward it to you. And
Okay.
I can use all the help I can get.
You sir down there at the end, and I'm sorry, I forgot your Mark, thank you.
Hamlet, wildfire. Now, is there considerations in this act that they're going to be working with prevention and dealing with fires? And so, great. What about post-care for wildfires? And that is a 2-pronged thing. Post-care means we're trying to eliminate any additional fires that come up from that 2 to 3 months later that are underground or whatever. And it's also prevention, because if you go through Sandy, you go through Estacada, you do some of the rivers up in there, you see a lot of waste in the fires. And those things are ripe for another major catastrophe. So as a legislation actually looking at that, so that creates now prevention for another bad situation that we had several years ago.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I would say that that's not a phrased like that. That's not quite a topic I hear a lot about. I do know that like with just being close to our disaster management office here and having gone through some of the work at post fire here, right? There is a lot that goes into the aftermath of a fire, including cleanup that ODOT did along 224 down the Clackamas River area, and they did that for years to make sure that that area was safe to reopen. And they were under a lot of pressure to reopen it quicker than it was ready to be reopened. I remember being on a tour with representative at the time and the governor at the time, and ODOT officials and maybe a Clackamas commissioner as well, going down the road, and the desire was to reopen it because the fishing tours wanted to go, the rapid tours wanted to go, and the river was probably fine, was the feeling. But to drive to those spots, like even while we were driving, a tree literally fell down when we were driving down the road.
Right.
Right. And rocks were on the road when we came back that weren't there before. So I know that they are super thoughtful about like the work after, and I think that that gets funded after as well. And the other thing that I noticed is there are so many things to fund now, moving forward, and the emergencies now, that the legislature sets aside certain amount of funds to have their, oh, and I just forgot the name of this group, but it's basically like an emergency response committee. What's the name of this group, guys? Where they can sort of meet every quarter, and they a few like legislative folks can make some
E-board?
the e-board. Thank you. Yeah, emergency board. Obviously, the emergencies. Yeah, where they get a certain amount of money where they can be responsive to scenarios like that, where something later pops up and they can move forward and be responsive with some of the bucks left over after a budget's set.
A lot of what you're talking about is eye candy. They take care of along the rivers and everything, but you go quarter mile in from either directions of those high profile areas. And I mean, to go with the mayor of Malala, it's the idea of logging stuff that has already been burnt, and it can be taken out, it can be put into the communities for funds or whatever, but at the same time, it's preventing another catastrophe. So
Thanks.
that's why I was asking, are they looking at it in that manner?
Appreciate that. I will say, and thanks Jamie for reminding me, there are a couple of bills this year that like codify a group within, I believe it's Oregon Housing Community Services that has like a response-based program. So it's like, how do you help find new homes and new dwellings for people after a fire? It was more like on the human side of post-fire. So there are still, we've learned a lot the last, several years, like what do you need to do after a fire? And it's not just the trees, it's also like the people who have to move around as a result of it. So they are still taking steps at the legislature, and we're seeing that, like, how do we take care of the people, the Oregonians post-fire? And we do see some of those things, but I think it's a little trickier to deal with the fire itself. Yeah.
Mayor Drinkwine.
I just wanted to bring up that Estacada has entered into the CLT and glulam manufacturing, which is a byproduct of the forest that's coming out. What I'd like to know is, in legislation, are they talking about forest cleanup and the fact that it can be used for CLT and glulam, which hits the green energy category as well? Is there something combining those two to bring that to the table as a push forward in that, because you're solving two of your issues right off the bat? Looking at cleaning up the forest, which is major post-fire, and giving another outlet for your less fortunate or homeless to build and manufacture affordable housing, so that are already assembled. So it seems to me like that would be a good push in some, if it's not already on the table.
I have heard Representative Gamba talk about some of the former C4 member. Yeah. Representative Gamba has talked about some of these pieces too, just in the housing world in particular, that there are some pathways here. Glulam, CLT, that remains I'd say a hot topic amongst many legislators. But just still hard to attract that sort of industry and help it grow. And, you're kind of highlighting some of the pieces that we've even heard from our economic development team, which is you can have the industry here, but the trees might still be coming from Idaho. So it's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, all right.
So Trent, before we move on, I guess my question, so you'd mentioned back to the transportation piece. So what we're looking at here is there's not necessarily going to be funding for, and my note says to here, sexy city transportation projects, right?
Those are your words, but yeah.
Yes, okay. So we're looking at more of operations and maintenance pieces? Yes?
That is my expectation.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess my question then is for you, and I guess this group, would it behoove us to, as a group, come behind, get behind a couple of those more maintenance projects that you were talking about and push those forward in any capacity, or at least use as examples so that Clackamas County is at the table for conversation of those funds being used appropriately for maintenance aspects?
Yeah, I don't know if C4 needs to make a decision about that because that would be quite a robust effort, I think. We're probably going to see the package language here in about a month. The first draft come out or in early April. And it's a joint committee, so they have a deadline, I think, of like middle May. And then it'll kind of get worked, behind the rooms after that. So I don't know if it really makes sense for this sort of group to come together and say like, this is what we would do with our O&M dollars. But I would encourage you to do that exercise independently amongst your jurisdictions. And I say from Clackamas County's perspective, and to just tell you how we're thinking about it, at least at the staff level, is if the state highway fund goes up this much, the counties get 30% of 50, 30, 20. So we can calculate the Clackamas County gets this much percent of that 30%. So we can come up with a number, right? If the state highway fund increases by $50 million, $100 million, $1 billion. So we know we can ballpark so we can say like, if we were to get this much money, if the package gets this high, maybe we could potentially buy 40 rapid flashing beacons, or we could pave this many miles, over a 2-year period. And I think having some safety or paving or road projects like that in mind to socialize with your legislator is what we are starting to think about how we would want to do it. And I would encourage y'all to do the same.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
An example I would use, let's just say that, Mayor, Canby has a project that currently you don't have the funds for. But if you knew there was an increase coming, if there was, in transportation package, this is one of your important projects that you would be able to actually complete. And then you could communicate that to your state legislator, Senate, House Rep, whatever it may be. I think that's pretty well the concept. So that you can all of you can do that, help lobby to say, we could do more, but we can't fund this particular project. And maybe it's one of your pet projects that the community is interested in. I think that's the concept.
Okay. Anything else on this topic before moving on to our last piece? None? Okay. Thank you, Trent. Appreciate that. Next up for the evening is updates, JPAC and MPAC. JPAC, what do you got?
I have a proposal, somewhat of a proposal, but I just want to, and I'm going to ask Jamie if I need to for help, if we need any clarification. But you heard us talk about the current RFFA process at JPAC, which would give us the ability to move forward. We have a project, we asked for $15 million for the Sunrise Corridor. Portland's asking for, millions of dollars for 82nd Avenue. So this rough around comes around every several years when there's bonding available. Now there's some bonding capacity available. So we're trying to get our project moved forward. So the region's identified TV Highway, they have identified Montgomery Park, 82nd Avenue, and the Burnside Bridge, and lastly, the Sunrise Corridor, which is a planning project. It's a little bit different than construction projects. So we're trying to get support for that, and we have been communicating, I think positively towards trying to find a solution, because there's just obviously more projects than there is money. And we're trying to come up with a compromise. We may have landed on something, but we may need a letter from this group ideally, and maybe even your voices to testify at the next JPAC meeting, which is a couple Wednesdays from now. So it's a twofold message here for the ask here. We don't have the exact language of a letter that we would craft, but we would like to have somewhat a green light from you all to craft the letter. Then when we have it crafted to fit that particular moment in time, to understanding the politics, we would circulate that for you so you know what we came up with. But basically to kind of give us a blank check, not a check for money, but permission to draft a letter from C4 and possibly have some of you lined up to testify at the JPAC meeting. So that's a broad simplification of the ask. If you have any details, Jamie is here and she could fill you in on some of the dynamics. I feel better today than I did a week ago because we're coming to some regional agreement, but we're not sure. Things could change. Tomorrow morning, there's a TPAC meeting, which is one of the committees on the back of your thing. They are meeting tomorrow morning. And so we'll have more information following that, but our great staff are doing great work on trying to get that particular project funded. And the heavy lift for us is it's not a construction project. We also have Counselor Christine Lewis here, who might want to add. She's been a great advocate for this project as well. So, I would maybe look, Counselor, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you summed it up well, that the project has come a long way in the past week. The TPAC packet actually went out later than our staff like to put out a packet because we were getting the number for Sunrise up so that we are starting in a position of strength.
Yep. Thank you. Jamie, did I leave anything out?
I guess I just add, there's a meeting of JPAC for the
With the mic, please.
Come to the mic there.
Come to the mic.
Being the mic, please. We're so not used to it.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. There is a JPAC meeting coming up where there could be testimony needed, but there's also going to be a public comment for this bond package that's being put together. And then we're really going to need to show up to really give voice to all the work that's been done and support for these dollars coming this direction. So that's going to start the next week in March, the end of March, and run through the end of April. There'll also be a public hearing. They're thinking around April 17th, where they'll be looking for public testimony. So maybe for the JPAC meeting, depending on how things land, and definitely during the public comment period. Thank you.
So just for clarification and make sure I've got this lined up. So Commissioner Savas, you're asking for this group to approve a letter from this body for this package?
Well, basically be for the project.
Okay.
Yeah, for the project, just advocating for the whys, not necessarily about the dollar amount, not necessarily about any particulars about the proposal that's on the table, because we don't have that here tonight, but if we just advocate for the rationale of the project, why it's so important. I know that, Mayor Drinkwine, you've been a big advocate for that. Sandy's been a big advocate for that. Maureen, everyone down the line, Happy Valley, that's one of our biggest frankly, it's the oldest project in the region that's still out there underfunded.
So we would probably have this conversation at the next C4 meeting to approve this letter? Or
Well,
are
we're
you
hoping,
to do
well,
it through email?
possibly both. Jamie?
Yes, so JPAC meeting's the 20th. So if we were to need support for the project ahead of the JPAC meeting, I think the question is, would you all be comfortable with submitting some sort of a letter that would be circulated, just voicing support for the project? If things are shaping up well and we don't need the testimony for the JPAC meeting, then that public comment period that I mentioned that starts at the end of March and runs through the end of April is really the place where that would come into play. And then you would have the benefit of having another C4 meeting where you could talk about the letter itself and also plan for testimony in person for those who could do it.
And the JPAC meeting is
The
April,
20th, I believe.
March or April?
March
March, thank you.
7:30 a.m.
So, yeah, and there are,
And it's Zoom, so I can be in my pajamas if need be.
There will always be an option for you to be in your pajamas on Zoom.
I guess just for clarity, there's there's the March and then the April. And, we don't want to overplay our hand. So if it turns out it's better to wait till April, we'll wait to April. It's very dynamic right now. And it seems to be progressing in the right direction. So if so, we might hold on the letter until next month. But if it turns out it gets, we might need you, we're going to call you and maybe help get you you all know what the project is. So, so Jamie is our our key person on this project. She's done a great job advancing that. And Happy Valley is one of our partners, as well as ODOT and others that have been directly involved in the planning for this. So happy to answer any questions. But that's basically this. REFA has been the primary thing being discussed at JPAC. And anything else, Counselor, at JPAC that you'd like to mention? And I know Mayor Buck's on the line, but I'm not sure he's.
He's got his hand up.
Has his hand up.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, good. I didn't know we could hear you or not. Anything you
Here,
want?
I can, yes. No, well, the only other thing, and Commissioner Savas summarized the REFA, dynamic really well, but it is seeming positive, and there are other jurisdictions around the table that are really, I feel like, working with Clackamas. So the Clackamas team, in general, I think has done a really good job advocating for ourselves in that respect. So I share Commissioner Savas's optimism, and but certainly, having all of our voices perhaps present at some point might be very important. Because certainly it's not a done deal. And then the other thing we've been talking about, though, is this MTIP amendment for the Rose Quarter project. And so they're getting ready, just as a brief update. I mean, they're getting ready to fund the first phase, which is kind of the first phase is two phases, phase 1A and phase 1. And that's being accomplished with some HB 2017 money. And then, of course, that Connecting Communities grant that the region received from the federal government. And so they're going to be starting construction on kind of the first part. And that's not the whole Rose Quarter project, but the first phase will accomplish some of the auxiliary lane work and do about 30% of the freeway cap. That's it. Well, that's not like that's it, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So just to wrap up on the letter, if someone would be willing to just make a motion to authorize us to craft a letter that we will circulate if we need it. And if we can wait till April, then you'll see it in April. If not, you'll see it in the email for the March meeting.
I make a motion, we have Clackamas County staff draft a letter to bring back to us for approval for the Sunrise Corridor.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Everyone, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
Great, thank you.
we'll do that.
Apologies for staff's clarification. When you say bring it back to you for approval, are you looking for approval from the full C4 body or to circulate the letter for their awareness?
Yeah, we won't be able to meet as a body. So for clarification,
Email consensus,
yeah,
possibly signatures, city signatures if we have the time.
yep. That'd be.
That might be powerful on the letter, putting our city logos on it if our councils approve it.
Thank you.
Okay. MPAC. Any updates on MPAC? Anyone? Commissioner Lewis?
I'm no longer an MPAC counselor.
Oh.
I dropped one meeting.
You could. There you go. So we don't have an MPAC update right now. Okay. We'll move in. Any other business or announcements of any kind? Yes, Mayor Milch.
Last year, through the county, supportive housing services funds from Metro and state homeless service provision funds were combined, and we had something called city-led initiatives that cities were able to apply for funds for projects at a local level that either prevented or addressed issues of housing and homelessness and prevention. I know that the county's not ready yet to do that process in this budget fiscal year. But I saw that Metro had recently passed some legislation or proposed some legislation that would allow for other jurisdictions, and I assume it meant cities, to sort of apply directly for some of that funding. So I just wanted to get some clarification on, is that the intent of that? And will we be seeing a little more direct rather than through the county's funneling of funds?
So we did first read an ordinance. It has not been scheduled for a second reading. So to be very clear, it was brought forward without a second date, so it's not in effect. The language is very specific that the funds that are from the Metro Administrative Fund, so not the portion of the main portion. We have our part that we use to administer and hopefully like chart the data now that we have data sharing agreement. Thank you, county. We would like to look at the fact that we have about $30 million carryover from the first 3 years that we don't expect to spend, but we would like to be able to work not only with counties, but other local governments to spend those dollars. Very specifically, if we were to make additional investments in City of Portland, we would like to have the option to work directly with City of Portland and not have to go through Multnomah County. Don't know if you've been reading the news about Multnomah County. So that, I would say that is what drove that. I don't think this would create the grant program that we had been talking about creating for cities to work with Metro, getting grants, but to have direct relationship, most particularly with City of Portland.
Okay, that clarifies it for me. Thank you. If it does change in the other direction, let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if the county, as we get closer to a new budget budget year, it wants to go back and renew that again, I think cities may have projects again that they'd like to be able to fund through something like that.
Yeah, we are, Counselor and I get met recently. It's one of the biggest topics we have, and I think really what the annual funding stream actually turns out to be, or what it may be after it is changed, if it indeed goes on the ballot, if it's changed, to see what we have at the end of the day. And I think that there's, I'm really proud of the work we're doing here in the county and our partnership with the cities where we can, or where there's willing cities to do something. I think the challenge is that other areas in the region that are not performing as well, that are sometimes getting some bad publicity, makes us kind of hurts us all in this lift. So.
Well, that never happens. Mayor Buck.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add on to that, there's Mayor Lisa Beatty and I are representing Clackamas County on President Peterson's kind of table on this topic, and of course Commissioner West is the co-chair of that group, and I believe Chair Roberts is participating as well. But we are continuing, to advocate for the types of partnerships region-wide that the cities in Clackamas have enjoyed with Clackamas County, and also continuing to advocate for program efficiencies and relationship improvements between the parties and all of that. That we just had our first meeting on that topic the other week. We have our second meeting coming up on Monday. But that topic in general might be a good one. I know we didn't talk about topics, but for the C4 retreat too, it's an idea.
Thank you, Mayor Buck. Appreciate it. Any other new business? I have one, and that's to the group here. What'd y'all think of coming together in person this evening? Okay, it's gained favor. That's good. How frequently do we want to do this? Every month, every other month, once a quarter, once every 6 months?
I'm an every month vote, but.
Okay,
I'm in every quarter.
quarterly, okay.
Quarterly.
Mayor Gostowski?
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
Where I'd be at.
Okay. I have some quarterly.
I'm good with every month. I think it's nice that you have to wear pants to the meeting finally.
Made that joke earlier, and I thought that was
It's
just
still
gonna stay
just
between
as
us.
funny.
Yeah, right. Oh, Scott, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with you. Okay, any other thoughts?
I tend to be more of a every month sort of guy.
Okay,
It's gonna be
so Jamie, how would you like us to gather this feedback for,
Doodle poll.
do a doodle poll?
Yeah.
I can
Mayor
most-
O'Neill, I didn't catch what you said.
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
So I'm hearing it split about half and half. I can send out a survey. Alternatively, we can split the difference and go to every other month starting out and then adjust after maybe 2-3 meetings.
Does that seem applicable? Let's go every other month. So we met this time, we'll go,
Compromise, I like it.
yep, that works for me. We'll try it out. and we'll course correct, maybe by the time the retreat rolls around.
If food's served at every meeting, I might change my vote. Just kidding.
It depends. Are you bringing it?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know.
I don't, it was originally, we did do that. And, I think there was something called, oh yeah, a budget, that we lost out on that opportunity. So we can start a fund, and if cities want to pitch in, then we can do that, or we just take turn in each city buy pizza every other month. And we'll start with West Lynn. Does that work, Rory?
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we'll go every other month, and see how that goes. All right. Any other business for the order?
Mayor Hudson,
Yes, sir.
can we
Trent,
have it?
Trent's hands up was
Sorry.
first, so
I'm
that's okay.
sorry.
On the issue of food, please take some home.
Okay.
Our next agenda, we can discuss the May schedule, because that would be the next time we're meeting, and we might be out of town, or the majority of us.
Fact.
Thank you.
The executive committee will touch that subject at our meeting. Perfect. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is
So move.
there a second? It's moved and seconded. Anyone want to stay? No? Good night, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. It's been great.
That Morrow? Is that Morrow? Who seconded?
It was, Council President, Anderson.
Yeah.
Will.
Can I borrow your pen again? Or do you have a card?
If you would please,
You know,
grab your name tag and put it back on the back table there, so